Lesson 11, I will compare and order mixed numbers in various forms. So in Lesson 11, we are still talking about decimals, and we're talking about decimals that are greater than 1, which we refer to as mixed numbers. And we're going to compare them when they are in various forms. So we're going to start with this piece of paper that you have in your math binder. You're going to notice that it looks like 6 little flashcards. I want you to cut these cards apart, and then I want you to take a look at all 6 of these cards, and I want you to try to put them in order from least to greatest. And then I want you to come back. So pause the video, cut out this 6 cards, look at them, and see if you can put them in order from least to greatest, and then come back. Okay, so hopefully you separated all 6 of these cards and you looked at how you could put them in order. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is that these are not in the same form. You can see that 3/10 and 1300ths are in unit form. And you can see that 2/10 and 1700ths are in decimal form, and 3400ths and 4/10 are in fraction form. Okay, so just like fractions, when you're comparing fractions, a lot of times we'll put fractions in with a common denominator or common units to help us to be able to compare them. So that's what I hope that you thought to do with yourself whenever you were trying to figure this out. So let's just go through and let's write in decimal form and in fraction form. So if I have 3/10, it would look like this in decimal form. And in fraction form, it would look like this, 3/10. So I've got decimal form. So if I wanted to do that in fraction form, it would be 2/10. And then if I had 1700ths, and then 3400ths, and then with 1300ths, it would be 1300ths and 1300ths. And then with 4/10, it would look like this. So you can see that we have tenths and we have hundredths. So the easiest way to compare these would be to go to put all of these in hundredths. So for 3/10, that would be 30 hundredths or 30 hundredths. For 2/10, that would be 20 hundredths or 20 hundredths. And then these are all in hundredths, and I just come down here and make this 40 hundredths or 40 hundredths. So now that they are all in the same form, we could look at the fractions or we could look at the decimals. It doesn't matter, but we should pick one and we could compare. All right, so how about we just look at the decimals? Okay, so we've got 30 hundredths, 20 hundredths, 17 hundredths, 34 hundredths, 13 hundredths, and 40 hundredths. So now is there anything in your order that you'd like to change? Look at how you ordered these decimals and fractions and decide if you think that you've got something out of order. If you have something out of order, go ahead and fix it before we check. Okay, so which card would come first? So hopefully you put 1300ths first because it is the smallest. And then second would be 1700ths. Third would be 20 hundredths. Fourth would be 30 hundredths. Fifth would be 34 hundredths, and 40 hundredths would be last. So this is an example of what we're going to do today. Remember, our learning target was we're going to compare mixed numbers. Now, none of these were mixed numbers. All of these were less than one whole, but they were definitely in various forms. You can see units, and you could see fractions, and you could also see decimals. So this is what we're going to be working with today. Now, we may be using some of these, put them on a number line to compare. Some of them will be finding common units like we did just now. All right, so let's take a look at our problem set. So we have Lesson 11 problem set. Go ahead and put your name here, and let's take a look at the directions. Plot the following points on the number line. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at my number line and see how it's divided. So you can see that this number line does not go from whole number to whole number, which is what we're always used to. We're used to going from 0 to 1, or 0 to 2, or 2 to 4, or 2 to 3. But these are not whole numbers. You can see this whole number line only goes from 1/10 to 4/10. So each of these marks would have to be what? If this whole is a tenth and it's divided into 10 parts, then each of these divisions or each of these tick marks would be hundredths. So that's going to make it a lot easier for us to plot these points. So let's start right here with 2/10. Well, 2/10 is already on the number line, so all we have to do is just mark it. I'm going to put a little check mark by that. Now we've got 1/10, which again is already on the number line. All we have to do is just mark it. We don't have to label it. And now we have 33 hundredths. So this would be 10 hundredths, 20 hundredths, 30 hundredths. So if I wanted 33 hundredths, where do you think that would be? Well, you put it where you think that it would go, and then let's compare and see if we have it in the same place. Okay, well, we need to count over. So this is 30 hundredths. This would be 31 hundredths, 32 hundredths, 33 hundredths. So hopefully that's where you put it. And I'm going to go ahead and label that 33 hundredths. And then 21 hundredths. I want you to pause the video and I want you to try to put 21 hundredths and 32 hundredths where you think they go on the number line and then come back. Okay, so hopefully you try to put 21 hundredths where you thought it went. So if this is 10 hundredths and this is 20 hundredths, then this would be 21 hundredths. And then for 32 hundredths, we're going to go to 30, and then we're going to do 31, and then we're going to do 32 hundredths, and I'm going to write it up here. And it's a good thing that I've been checking these off because you can see that I skipped one, didn't I? I skipped 12 hundredths. Hopefully you didn't skip it, and you figured out where it went. If not, let's do it together. So if this is if this is 10 hundredths, this is 11 hundredths, and this would be 12 hundredths. Okay, so if we wanted to compare these fractions or these decimals, it would be really easy because they're on our number line. As you move to the right, the numbers are getting larger. Okay, let's take a look at B. All right, so this time we have some mixed numbers. You can see that these numbers are greater than 1. Okay, so we've got 3 6/10, 3 7/10, 3 8/10, 3 9/10. So again, this whole number line is only 30 tenths. So that means that each of these are only 30 hundredths, So that means that each of these has a value of 1/100th, which is definitely going to make it easier for us to compare or to be able to plot these on the number line. So if I have 3 62 hundredths, well, this would be 3 60 hundredths, 3 61 hundredths, 3 62 hundredths. All right, so the next one's 3 7/10. Well, that's already on the number line, isn't it? All we have to do is just plot it. We don't have to worry about labeling it. So this is 3 85 hundredths. So as a decimal, remember that would look like this: 3 85 hundredths. So if this is 3 80, then all we have to do is count over 5. This would be 81, 82, 83, 84. This would be 3 85 hundredths. Okay, so now this one is written as an improper fraction. So if I thought to myself, how many 10 tenths are in this? Well, there would be 3, and I would have 3 8 tenths, or 38 tenths. So that's already here, so we just have to mark it. And then the last one is 364 hundredths. Well, how many hundredths would be in there? Well, there would be 3, right? I could decompose that into 300 hundredths, which would be my whole number 3. And then I would have 64 hundredths left over. So if this is 3 62 hundredths, then this is 3 63 hundredths, and that would make this 3 64 hundredths. Okay, so let's move to C. All right, so for C, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to try to plot as many of these as you can. If you come to one that's confusing, just circle it, and whenever I come back, we'll do it together. But I want you to look at all 6 of these, and some of these you should be able to do all by yourself. Pause the video and try to do them, and let's come back and see which ones you got correct. Okay, hopefully you pause the video and you try to do some of these on your own. For 6 3/10, written as a decimal, that would look like this: 6 3/10. Well, this is already marked, so we're just going to go ahead and put a point there. We don't have to label it, it's already labeled. And then for 6 and 31 hundredths, well, this would be 6 and 30 hundredths, so that would make this 6 and 31 hundredths. Okay, so now we have an improper fraction. If I have 628 hundredths, that's the same thing as 6 and 28 hundredths. Well, if this is 6 and 30 hundredths, then if I counted backwards, this would be 6 and 29 hundredths, and this would be 6 and 28 hundredths. All right, so 62 tenths. That would be the same as 6 and 2 tenths, which is already labeled. We just have to put a point there. All right, so I'm going to check that off. Now I've got 6 and 43 hundredths. So if this is 6 and 40 hundredths, which happens to be the last one, I'm going to go ahead and mark that one. And then this would be 6 and 41 hundredths, 6 and 42 hundredths, and 6 and 43 hundredths. So hopefully you got most of those right, if not all of them right. All right, now let's go to another strategy. Now we're going to use the greater than or less than symbol between each number. And you can see that these are in various forms. You can see I've got fractions, and you can see I have decimals. And I think the most important part to think here is that, first of all, we need to get these all in the same form, and then we need to get them all in the same units. I think since we already have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that are in fraction form, we should just go ahead and take these, this one, and this one, and go ahead and change this one to fraction form too. So if I have 27 tenths, that would be the same thing as 270 hundredths, right? And then if I've got 2 and 7 hundredths, that would be the same thing as 207 hundredths. So notice what I'm doing. I'm putting all of these in hundredths form. So if I have 27 hundredths, it's already in the right form. And then here I have 2 and 71 hundredths. That would be written 271 hundredths. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these out so that we don't get confused. We already changed these. Okay, this one is already in the same form as these. Notice it's in an improper fraction over hundredths. So now we just have to change this one. This one would be 272 hundredths. So now all we have to do is look at the numerator because all of these are in hundredths. So I've got 270, 207, 27, 271, and 272. Well, which would be the smallest? 27 hundredths. Now I do notice that it says using decimal form. So that means we'll have to change these to decimal form. Okay, so maybe I just need to start over. Okay, so it says arrange the following numbers in order from greatest to least using decimal form. Use the symbol greater than between each number. So we're going to start with the greatest and we're going to go to the least, and we have to put these in decimal form. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and change these ones that are not in decimal form to decimal form. So I've got 27 tenths. So I'm going to mark this out and I'm going to rewrite it down here as a decimal. So that would look like this, 27 tenths. Okay, so here's my 27. 27 tenths is the same thing as 2 and 7 tenths. Now you can see I already have 2 and 7 hundredths. Now I'm going to take 27 hundredths, and that would look like this, 27 hundredths. Now I have 2 and 71 hundredths. So I'm going to mark that out. I'm going to rewrite that down here, 2 and 71 hundredths. And then I've got 227 hundredths. So let's look at that. 227 hundredths. Well, you know, in hundredths, my decimal point has to go here. So 2 and 27 hundredths is the same thing as 227 hundredths. And then my last one's already in decimal form. Now you'll notice all of these are in hundreds, 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 except for this one's in tenths. So if I add a 0 here, now I have them all in hundreds. So I've got, look at my whole numbers. I've got 2, 2, 2, 0, 2, 2. So remember, I'm looking for the greatest. So I know it's not going to be the 2700ths. So now I'm going to look at the tenths. I have 0, I have 7, 7, 7. So I'm going to look at my sevens to figure out which one of these is the largest. Well, when I look at the hundreds, I have a 2, a 0, and a 1. So 2 and 72 hundredths is going to be the greatest. So I'm going to write it first, and I have to use the greater than symbol. It is greater than 2 and 71 hundredths. And I'm just going to draw a little line through these as I use them. Oops, I haven't used that one yet. It's greater than 2 and 70 hundredths. So I'm going to mark out all three of these. I've used this one, and this one. So now I've got 2 and 7 hundredths, 27 hundredths, and 2 and 27 hundredths. So one of my next one's going to be these ones with a 2 as a whole number, right? So if this is 2 and 7 hundredths, and this is 2 and 27 hundredths, then 2 and 27 hundredths has to come next. And then 2 and 7 hundredths, and then lastly 27 hundredths. Okay, so notice I had to convert all of these to decimals, and then I changed them all to hundredths to be able to compare them easier. All right, so let's take a look at B. So this time I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I need to convert these to decimal. Okay, so I think this time I'm going to try to write it above to see if that'll be less confusing. All right, so I've got 12 and 3/10. So let's make this a decimal. 12 and 3/10. Okay, I'm going to mark that out. And then I'm going to go ahead and write this one up here, even though we're not changing it. 13 and 2/10. And now I've got 134 hundredths. So that would be 1 and 34 hundredths. And then I've got 13 and 2 hundredths. I didn't do anything to it. And then my last one is 12 and 20 hundredths. Okay, so now I've got them all rewritten. And I'm trying to find the one that's the largest. So I'm going to look at these whole numbers. I've got 12, 13, 1, 13, and 12. So either 13 and 2/10 is the largest, or 13 and 2 hundredths is the largest. Well, which one do you think is the largest? You're right, it's 13 and 2/10. So let's write 13 and 2/10 first. It is greater than, I'm going to mark it out, it is greater than 13 and 2 hundredths. And I'm going to mark it out. So now I have to see is 12 and 3/10, 1 and 34 hundredths, or 12 and 2/10. So which one would be greater? 12 and 20 hundredths, or 12 and 2/10, or 12 and 3/10? Well, what if I change this one to hundredths? Maybe that would make it easier for us to compare. Well, I know it's going to be between these two that have 12 as a whole number. So the next largest is going to be 12 and 30 hundredths. And then it's going to be 12 and 20 hundredths. And lastly, it's going to be 1 and 34 hundredths. Okay, one more. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is get these all in the same form by converting to decimals. So let's do 7 and 34 hundredths. So that would be written 7 and 34 hundredths. So you're going to write small and you've got to write neat to not make a mess of this. So 7 and 4/10, 7 and 3/10. All right, so 750 hundredths, remember that's going to be 7 and 50 hundredths. And then I've just got regular 75. And then I've got 7 and 2/10. Okay, so let's look at whole numbers. I have 7, 7, 7, 7, 75, and 7. So which one would be the greatest? Well, 75, of course. So let's go ahead and put 75 is greater than, and we're going to go ahead and mark that one out. So now I've got all 7. 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. So I've got to look at the tens place. So let's look at the tens place. So this is a 3, a 4, a 3, a 5, and a 2. So which one would be the greatest? Well, 5 tenths, right? So 7 and 5 tenths, or 7 and 50 hundredths, would be the next largest. I'm going to mark that out. So now I've got 3, 4, 3, and 2. So which one would be the next largest? 7 and 4 tenths. That's right. So now I've got 7 and 3, 7 and 3, 7 and 2. So I've got 3 and 3. So this one is 34 hundredths, and this one would be 30 hundredths, right? So which one would be next? 7 and 34 hundredths. And that is greater than 7 and 30 hundredths, which is greater than 7 and 2 tenths. Okay, so we have 75 is greater than 7 and 5 hundredths, or excuse me, 7 and 50 hundredths is greater than 7 and 4 tenths, is greater than 7 and 34 hundredths, is greater than 7 and 3 tenths, is greater than 7 and 2 tenths. So you're going to be careful not to get my sevens and my greater than signs confused because they kind of do look similar. All right, so now we've got 2 more application problems that we're going to solve today. In the long jump event, Rhonda jumped 164 meters. Mary jumped 1 6/10 meters. Carrie jumped 94 hundredths of a meter. And Michelle jumped 106 meters. Who jumped the farthest? So what could we draw to help us here? Well, I'm thinking we could draw a place value chart would be the easiest. So I'm going to draw a place value chart that has a decimal point right here in the middle. And I'm going to call this ones, tenths, and hundredths. And I'm just abbreviating here. Ones, tenths, and hundredths. So let's go ahead and put the 1 64 hundredths in the place value chart. So I've got 1 64 hundredths, and this is Rhonda. So I'm going to put an R beside this one. And then Mary jumped 1 6/10. So let's label this Mary. She jumped 1 6/10. And then Carrie jumped 94 hundredths. Oops, I'm going to have to make this a little bit smaller. All right, so Carrie jumped 94 hundredths. And Michelle, not to get confused with Mary, I'm going to put M-I, jumped 1 6/100ths. So now looking at our place value chart, can we figure out pretty easily who jumped the farthest? Well, we can compare pretty quickly. Well, first of all, we know it's not Carrie because she didn't jump a whole meter like the others did. So now I can just totally eliminate Carrie. Now I'm going to look at the tenths place. Well, Rhonda and Mary jumped 6/10 and Michelle jumped 0/10. So I know it's not Michelle. So it's going to be between Rhonda and Michelle. So she jumped 64 hundredths and Michelle only jumped 6/10, which if I change that to hundredths would be 60. So who jumped the farthest? Well, Rhonda. So I would say Rhonda jumped the farthest. All right, so let's take a look at the last one. In December, 2 3/10 feet of snow fell. In January, 2 14/100 feet of snow fell. In February, 2 19/100 feet of snow fell. And in March, 1 1/10 feet of snow fell. During which month did it snow the most? During which month did it snow the least? This problem is very similar to the problem that we just solved. I want you to draw something, and then I want you to see if you can't solve this problem all by yourself. If you get stuck, you can always press play, but I want you to pause the video and think to yourself, can you use the same strategy that we did last time? And if not, what could you do or what could you draw to model these decimals so that you could figure out which one was the most and which one was the least? I want you to come back when you think you have an answer. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video and you tried to solve this problem all by yourself. Now, I don't know if you chose to draw a place value chart, but that's what I chose to do. And you can see that I took the time to make this one look a little bit nicer. And you can see that I labeled this ones, tenths, and hundredths. And then you can see D stands for December, January, February, or March. And then I just went in and I just filled this in. 2 and 3 tenths, 2 and 14 hundredths, 2 and 19 hundredths, and 1 and 1 tenth. So when it came time to figure out which month did it snow the most, I could first compare whole numbers. So I knew it wasn't March, and then I went to compare the tenths, and I saw that in December it snowed 2 and 3 tenths, and that was more than January and February. So it snowed the most in December. When I tried to figure out which did it snow the least, that was easy because in March it had the smallest whole number. It only had 1 foot of snow and the other had 2. So I put it snowed the most in December and the least in March. So I hope that what you've learned about comparing mixed numbers is, first of all, you need to get all of the fractions or all of the decimals in the same form, whether it be in fraction form or whether it be in decimal form. And then it's easier to get them all in the same units. It's generally easier to change tenths to hundredths because all you have to do is add a 0. Then it makes comparing the mixed numbers much easier.